Soon, all the tenant farmers have left to eat is grass and nettles. Across Ireland, the Great Hunger leaves too many dead to count, too many dead to bury. The experience of one eyewitness still haunts a Roscommon parish priest.
The famine grew more horrible towards the end of December 1846. Many were buried with neither inquest nor coffin. The first was that of the father of two very young children, whose mother had already died of starvation. His death became known only when the two children toddled into the village. They were crying of hunger and complaining that their father would not speak to them for 4 days. They told how he was as cold as a stone.
The famine creates tens of thousands of orphans, a tragedy with an intimate meaning to the thousands of Americans tracing their ancestors.
I know my family's from Ireland, but I want to know where in Ireland they're from.
In America, Dennis Shanley's informal research leads him to believe he came from a part of Ireland where he may have shared the Nary's defiant heritage. Even in the face of starvation, the Nary family hungers for justice.
I tell you, boys, it's not the right time.
I say we go up to the big house tomorrow night and torch it.
We've waited long enough, Dad. I'm not waiting any longer, do you hear me?
We have to strike while the iron is hot.
We don't know what it is just yet.
In the debris, Orser's team uncovers proof of their defiance.
It's a very tiny object, but it's a powerful object. It's a political object, really.
On a fragment of a clay pipe are the letters P-E-A-L, for repeal, a battle cry to revoke direct English rule of Ireland. The Narys are part of a national struggle.
So when we look at that fragment of the repeal pipe, what we're looking at is one of the great mass democratic movements in the 19th century world.
By 1847, it's survival, not politics, that grips the countryside. The Blight is in its third year, a year that is known to this day as Black 47. The smell of rotting potato plants is overwhelmed by the stench of death. One family remembers.
So numerous were the dead and the decaying bodies that the air became putrid with stench and disease and germs. Fires were lighted in different quarters to purify the air.
Even now, the Nary family is too proud to beg for food. But their desperate neighbors look to London for help. Too bad the Englishman in charge of aid to Ireland blames the Irish people themselves.
The great evil with which we have to contend is not the physical evil of the famine, but the moral evil of the selfish, perverse, and turbulent character of the people.
The British government at that time was strongly influenced by evangelical Protestantism. When the Blight hits, one of the commonest ways that British kind of culture read it was to say, well, this must be a judgment of God on the Irish.
The British government forces landlords to foot the bill for famine relief. But their response only adds to the suffering. Today, children play outside a monument to misery, a notorious institution called the workhouse. This building, and scores like it, held famine victims as virtual prisoners. In a village near Ballykilcline, Professor Orser examines a cast-iron artifact of despair.
And this was the pot that used to make the soup for the people when they were here.
In the dark days of 1847, 3 million people, over 1/3 of the entire nation, line up for a meager bowl of watery barley soup. One woman recalls her father's ordeal.
There was one large pot resting in stones in the workhouse yard, and in this huge pot was made gruel to be distributed to a constant stream of starving people. The people came by every road to the workhouse for their measure of gruel.
More like a labor camp than a refuge. The workhouse is the ultimate humiliation. Inmates trade hard labor for starvation rations. Meals must be eaten in silence. Break the rules, and you're locked away in solitary confinement. One account recalled.
The victims preferred to die at home, even the destitute refusing to avail of their open doors.
Many see the landlord's miserly charity as a heartless scheme to force them off their land.
If you wanted relief, if you wanted to go to a workhouse, you had to surrender your holding before you could do that.
The workhouse often kills more than it saves. Cramped and overcrowded, infested with rats and lice, it's the perfect breeding ground for disease. One resident confides.
Black spots gradually crossed the body. Lips became bloodless. It was dreaded more than the actual hunger.
Victims call it famine fever, but in reality, they are dying from typhoid and dysentery. Killer infections sweep through a population weakened by years of famine. The epidemic claims hundreds of thousands of lives. By the middle of 1847, Ireland's workhouses are swamped by the sick and the dying.